The information contained in this podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice. Rather, it is provided for educational purposes only. This has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
This is Frederica Matthews Green, and you're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity, 24 hours a day.
Welcome to Live with the Louhs with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living and relationships to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome again to Live with the Louhs. My name is Father Nicholas Lowe, and I'm joined by my lovely wife and co-host, Dr. Roxanne Lowe, who's a clinical psychologist, and we are so excited that you're taking the time on this December 7th to join us. We're honored that you're taking the time to spend an hour of your time with us this evening. You know, Live with the Louhs is a show that marries both faith and psychology to help you in your walk of faith, and we broadcast this show every single Tuesday from right here in Jacksonville, Florida, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You know, before we dive into our great topic tonight that I hope will encourage and inspire you, we do want to encourage you to stay connected to us through our social media platforms. You know, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have our own YouTube channel. They're all under the Louhs, and that unique last name is spelled Louhs. That's Louhs. We'd love for you to join us on those platforms, as well as if you're like us and love to receive daily words of encouragement. I think, Roxanne, we talk about this almost every day. We're so amazed at the emails that we receive from people who receive our daily inspirational messages and how helpful they have been from all over the world. We encourage you to do so. Thousands of people have joined this. You can go right now during the show, and if you're listening to this on a podcast, definitely go to thelouhs.com. That's our website. That's Louhs.com. Click on that subscribe button, and all you have to do is simply put in your email address, and every single day we will send you just a word of encouragement to guide you in your walk of faith. And as you all know by now, we authored a book last year that came out called Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan. We're so excited that's in its second printing at Ancient Faith, and it's got an amazing reviews from both Barnes & Noble, Amazon, as well as right here on Ancient Faith. And so you can find out if you're looking for a Christmas gift. We definitely encourage you to explore using our book. You can find it here at store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that title is Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan. And we also have the Audible version of this book that's recorded actually in our own voices. And again, you can find that at audible.com or again on our website at thelouhs.com. And as you all know, all the proceeds from this book are going to outreach ministries. We posted on our social media platforms this past week that we sent a check to the American Cancer Society from the proceeds from this book to help in memory of our dads, which became the impetus of us writing this book. And finally, on February 18th through the 20th of next year, at the Antiochian Village, Ancient Faith is hosting a retreat on marriage. In fact, it's called Making Over Your Marriage, and they've asked us to speak at this retreat. And so we encourage you, if you're looking for a way to grow your marriage, and I think every single person that's married would definitely find some sort of a need to do this. We do encourage you. Don't let this opportunity go by. Definitely register for this retreat. There's only 9, I believe. I was just looking at the numbers right now, Roxanne. There's only 9 registrations left, or a couple registrations that are left. So definitely do that. You can find out again about this at store.ancientfaith.com and then /events. All right, friends, we want you to join the conversation tonight. We're talking about a really, really important topic that I know will impact us and is so appropriate, especially during this season. So the phone number to call in is 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. We're also broadcasting our show on Ancient Faith's platform, on their social media platforms, as well as on our Facebook page at the Louhs. So definitely share some questions in those comment lines, as well as email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. So tonight we're speaking about navigating through the holidays with difficult relationships. You know, friends, so oftentimes we hear that Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. And yes, it is, because it's a time of the year where we celebrate our Savior Christ entering to the mess of the world to change our world, to change our lives. It's a wonderful time of the year also because we take moments to spend time with friends and family, eat those great desserts and have those meals together. We purchase gifts for our friends and family, and we love watching them open those gifts up. It is a wonderful time of the year. But according to psychological studies, even though it may be the most wonderful time of the year, it's also one of the most stressful times of the year. There are trees to decorate, gifts to purchase, meals to provide. But one of the number one reasons why there's so much stress is being around family members that can frustrate us, that can get under our skin. For many of us, it's not really a silent night, and there's no sleeping in heavenly peace. And so often when we're around those people, those family members, or sometimes even people that we haven't seen in a while, when we're ever around them, we can sometimes get frustrated, and it can really allow an unhealthy environment to take place. And so we thought we'd start out today by talking to you about a theme that's heard about in the very first chapters of the Gospel of Matthew. It's called the Beatitudes. And in these Beatitudes, these are basically the preamble to what is called the Sermon on the Mount. And it gives where Christ gives his most eloquent sermon to the world on this hillside. And if you wanted to read the Sermon on the Sermon on the Mount, you can find it in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. But I want to hone in on the word blessed, and specifically about one of those 9 Beatitudes that he mentions. You know, the word blessed in the Greek word is the word makari or makarios. It means sometimes translated as happy. But check this out, friends. It's not happy in a natural way. It's not like someone tells you a joke and you start laughing, or you look outside and go, wow, the sun is shining, let me be happy about that. Or your team wins a football game. No, it's not that type of happiness. This kind of happiness is not based upon the circumstances. It's based upon a joy that could only be found in Christ. It is based in Christ. And Jesus gives this extraordinary statement about, in many ways, how we should approach Christmas with a beatitude statement that says this in Matthew chapter 5, verses 7. You can write this down. It said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And, you know, Roxanne, before the show, when we were preparing, I did a little research on just what is mercy. And mercy is defined in Webster's dictionary as a compassionate or kindly forbearance shown towards an offender, someone that can get under our skin, or other persons in one's power. In other words, someone that may get frustrated or frustrate us. Now, the word forbearance literally means that it's something that you decide to endure. Something that you just simply accept the way that person is, that you don't let it bother you. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy.
And I just love that, because everything about those Beatitudes communicate exactly who Christ is throughout the entire New Testament. It's harmony. Everything he does is about unity and acceptance, tolerance, compassion, and bringing others together, loving others through loving him.
Right.
And so it is not easy to necessarily be merciful, but it is our calling. And the holidays are an opportunity. And I think we all have to look at it like this, that if the holidays are an opportunity to practice not what is easy, but what our calling
Exactly.
is about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, when Roxanne, as I was looking, just a quote that I came about in discussing about mercy said this: mercy is not giving someone what we perceive they deserve. When that family member or someone that maybe at work that just gets under our skin, that just frustrates us, and that we just kind of allow ourselves to get so annoyed with, or that can steal our joy from us. Mercy, in this quote, is not giving someone what we think they deserve because they offended us. Because the world that we're living in is always telling us to treat people the way they treat you. If someone offends you, offend them. If they don't invite you to their Christmas party, don't invite them to their to your Christmas party. If they do this, then your reaction is that. And what mercy is saying, you know what? True mercy is not doing a tit for tat. It's not giving someone what we think they deserve to be punished with.
And that's really, that is going to be what we're going to talk about all throughout. We're going to be giving you a lot of tools on how to do this, because we also recognize that choosing to be merciful is not necessarily a natural choice.
Right.
Our feelings don't naturally lead us there.
Exactly. So check this out, friends. If mercy is not giving someone what we think they deserve, then grace is the opposite. We all have on our Louhs Facebook page, and if you're interested in joining we have a group page within the Louhs Facebook page, and if you're not part of our group, you can definitely request to get in. We'll love to add you to our family there. But we asked this question to our group about what's the difference between mercy and grace, and it was so interesting the responses that people had on this. But I love that someone put it this way, and it was just beautiful. It said, grace is getting something that we don't deserve. So mercy is not giving someone what we think they deserve, and grace is getting something that we don't deserve. That God gives us grace. He gives us something that, to be quite honest with you, when he came into that manger, he came giving us something that we know from the Bible and from the teachings of our church, that the wages of sin were death, that there was an end, that there was a payment that needed to be paid. We even say it in the Lord's Prayer that there's a debt that we had based upon our sins. And yet God gave us this free gift.
When we were undeserving.
Exactly. And so we love to get it, but we don't oftentimes love to give it. You're listening to Live with the Louhs right here on Ancient Faith Radio. And again, as we've shared with you at the very beginning of the show, we're talking about how do we navigate through unhealthy relationships, especially during this Christmas season. We invite you to join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. Share us just really how you maybe deal with the holidays with someone that may be may get under your skin or may frustrate you. How do you handle that? Or maybe you're just asking for advice on how to do so. So again, that number is 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. So you know what compassion and mercy are? They're a choice. And Roxanne beautifully said it just a few moments ago. It's not a feeling. Mercy and compassion is a choice that you have to make, because everything that we see in our world is telling us to base everything that we do on our feelings. You disrespect me, I'm going to disrespect you. You don't come here, you come to my home and you don't really help out, then I'm not going to help out with you. Or, we just allow our feelings to kind of control. But if we truly want to bring on the character of Christ, it's a choice we make about compassion and mercy. Listen to how St. Paul writes in the book of Colossians. This is chapter 3, verses 12 to 13, a great, great Bible verse to remember. Listen to what he says about this. Again, going back to this choice. Therefore, as God's chosen people, that's the people that have accepted Christ and live for Christ. Therefore, as God's chosen people, you are called to be holy and you are dearly loved. Now listen to this. Now clothe yourselves with compassion, with kindness towards that family member, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. And if any of you have a grievance against someone, forgive them. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Now, listen to that. He's saying to you, you have to clothe yourself. So
There's a directive.
There's a directive, exactly. It's saying, hey, look, you need to go into your closet and put on some mercy, put on some compassion, put on some kindness. So during this show, friends, we're going to share with you 6 choices that we would encourage you to make every single day. It's not only just during this holiday season, but 6 daily choices in which you can clothe yourself with compassion and mercy. So if you want to, go get a pen and a piece of paper. You might want to write some of these things down. But let's start with number 1. We're going to choose to remember the reason for the season. Remember that, my friends. We got to remember what we're doing. It is so important that we stay grounded into remembering that this is an event that celebrates Christ's birth. And so many arguments take place within families over sometimes things that have been building and building up, taking Christ in many ways out of the family. To make matters worse, sometimes we're just like Martha, that's mentioned in the Bible. We're constantly working and working and working, all about doing the things about Christmas, but never the things that are truly for Christmas. We make great Marthas, but not great Marys.
I mean, and I think in remembering the reason for the season, this is our opportunity to walk into those doors and to be intentional. We have to decide who we want to be before we walk into that difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
It is a putting on of a clothing, not just our holiday gear, our holiday outfit, our gold and our red and our silver. It's clothing ourselves with our values, the values based in Christ, so that our reactions are based on that clothing versus other people's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If we are not intentional, our behavior becomes nothing more than a reaction to what's present in front of us. I mean, I also think it's helpful, in remembering the reason for the season, what is your end goal? When you walk into a room, who am I doing this for? Like, why is it so important for me to navigate this situation well?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to bring, health and healing, and not because of my relationship with this difficult person necessarily per se, but because of our relationship with God and because of our relationship with somebody that does matter. There's usually someone that does matter to you,
Mm-hmm.
and they become the reason you seek that harmony. Maybe it's so that that person can have a pleasurable environment with the people they want to be around that are maybe their family, right? So you are doing it for some level of a relationship that does matter to you. But most importantly, we're doing it because of our relationship with God. And what would God tell us? To be merciful, yes, to be a peacemaker. But to do that, we really have to have this sort of unwavering, and I'll say that again, unwavering commitment to live for Him.
Mm-hmm.
And that is independent of how other people behave. That is the experience of almost dying to ourselves in order to live for Him. That means not waiting on someone else to do the right thing before we pursue doing what we know is right. Because as you said earlier, Nick, it isn't earned when we give someone grace. It is freely given when we choose to be merciful, right? It also means letting our choices be inspired by that relationship with God rather than the feelings that are invoked in the midst of a moment.
Mm.
It also means choosing to love because we can't always depend on our feelings to guide us in showing love.
Mm-hmm.
And it means helping to bear one another's burdens. I mean, listen, the holidays, Christ's birth, His being put into the world to show us who we're supposed to be, we are joined as human beings, as one body, and become responsible truly for each other's salvation. So as you walk into a room at a holiday party and somebody is bothering you, remember, you in part are responsible for their salvation. So am I going to fuel them in this negative space that they're in, or am I going to gently and compassionately guide them out of a place that they shouldn't be in themselves? Right? We are responsible for each other's salvation. And as iron sharpens iron, so too are we called to sharpen one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ask you in those moments to consider, how am I sharpening this person?
Mm-hmm.
Am I just kicking them when they're down, fueling it, adding negativity to the fire? Or am I really saying, you know what, how can I be responsible for that person's salvation and model the behavior that I hope that they would have? And to do all of that, listen, we cannot manufacture the fruits of the Spirit. We have to draw near to Him during this time. If we are putting ourselves in situations where the devil can undermine us,
Right.
we have to be drawing that much closer to Christ so that it is He who lives in us and directs our path as much as is possible before these difficult events.
Right. And you're highlighting, Roxanne, the fruits of the Spirit that we see in the book of Galatians. And I love that. I actually mentioned it in this past Sunday's sermon because it was part of the ecclesiastical reading that we have in our church. And what I love about it is that it gives many ways our goals of how we should live. And just, for a reminder for all of us, it says the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ, they've crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. And since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with that Spirit. So I love what it's saying. And then, later on, and this is found in the book of Galatians, my friends, later on in that exact same chapter is where it says one of the more famous Bible verses. It says, "And carry each other's burdens, and in this way you fulfill the will of Christ in you." In other words, one of the hallmarks of our own faith is not just simply talking about our Christianity, but also living the character of Christ. He was loving. He was patient. He was merciful. He was compassionate. And there's a beauty that as we've been talking about with the Beatitudes, of saying, okay, there's a certain level of joy. Contrary to what the world that we're living in is telling us, there's a certain level of inner joy you have when you put on that character of Christ, even when the world is telling you not to do so, when it's telling you to give them back exactly the same way that they treated you, to get under their skin, to do things that undermine them. It's saying, no, there is a blessedness and inner joy that when you have that. And so truly remembering the reason for this season is that Christ came into a cave. And we oftentimes depict this. I love sharing this every year. We depict this in such a beautiful manger scene that we see in front of homes during the holiday season. But we need to know, friends, that the manger scene was nothing clean about it. It was an area in which they would have their sheep. The shepherds of the field would have their sheep there that would do everything that you could imagine in the evening there. So it was a very dirty place. And I believe in many ways it embodies our world, that Christ came into the messiness that exists, to be honest with you, in all of us and in the world that we live in, to come bless and to clean us. And so I think that not only in choosing to remember that, what He did for me, it allows me to also extend that to other people. You're listening again to Live with the Louhs, and we encourage you to join us tonight on the conversation. We truly believe that growth happens in a conversation. So don't be ashamed or afraid. If you can be an anonymous caller if you'd like to, but we'd love to hear from you. You can call us at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question and ask at ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And you can also email us. You can also submit a question on the comment area on our Facebook page under the Louhs. We're broadcasting live there as well. So if number one is let's choose to remember the reason for the season, then number two is another choice that we have to make. And that's let's choose to remember that everyone has a story.
And this is probably one of the biggest principles,
Mm-hmm.
because when offense hits, and it will,
Right.
for most people, in most situations, in most holiday seasons, this is an opportunity to practice patience and tolerance by choosing not to connect to it in a way that, if an emotion hits, we just engage it and make room for it and fuel it. That's not really going to be productive, because most people's comments, first of all, aren't really about you.
Mm-hmm.
And they also aren't looking to change. So if you personalize their offense, it becomes highly unproductive. Okay. It simmers this sort of negativity within you. And we're completely forgetting why these comments have come out to begin with. Remember, God can use conflict to be a sanctifying process within us. If we don't respond correctly. We don't really break the cycle. We fuel it. And God uses these situations, whatever we're in, actually, for his glory. So we have to be very discerning here. So we're remembering that everyone has a story. The truth is, questions that might come up that emit judgment, they're just that. They're judgments, right? Judgment is based on someone else's story, not yours. It's based on their values, not yours. So comments around politics or sensitive themes or even personal questions that kind of insinuate that judgment, like, when are you two going to get married? Or why haven't you found a boyfriend yet? Or I thought you gave up smoking. Or could you really afford to buy that new house?
Right.
Is your child still doing X, Y, and Z? All of that requires empathy. Empathy for a position or perspective that is not our own. It is empathy that sort of helps us make room for someone else to think differently than we do. Maybe they are traditionally minded, raised with a certain set of expectations, or raised to only, kind of have one way of doing things or approaching life. In general, any comment that someone makes generally reflects their culture, their story, their worries, their upbringing, their ideologies, and their preferences. That is what people's comments are truly about. So it isn't really something to engage in. It isn't something to defend about you. It's something to just accept and kind of take a curious stance on that tells me something about you. But I don't need to really do much with it other than just understand you and kind of move on from it. And truly, one phrase I would encourage everyone to write down for this holiday season is we have to stop expecting people to be different than who they are. We have to stop expecting people to be different than who they are. People tell you a lot about who they are if you just listen. And you cannot try to stomp on it or try to change it. So just state your position in a gentle, polite, kind of non-defensive, matter-of-fact way, and then move on to something else. Remember, we're responsible for their salvation. So I'm not here to engage this struggle or correct you or point out why this is so unjust. And to do this, we kind of have to unstick from our own righteousness. Right? Because we actually develop righteousness in these positions, right? Where their comment was wrong, it was offensive, it was unjust, and I have to now correct it. But keep in mind, it isn't really fair to sour an entire holiday experience for everyone by engaging this sort of frustrating family member. It isn't our job. So we have to let it pass. And, keep in mind that just because an emotion hits does not mean we have to engage it. We can let it pass.
I like that. That's so important. I think that I love to spend just a few moments on that, Roxanne. I think that's so easy that, because we allow our feelings
to lead
us, and as opposed to our choices lead, feelings should follow. And I think so often, as we've talked about before on our show, is, just because we think it doesn't mean it's actually true. And just because we feel it doesn't mean it's a fact. And I think we oftentimes play on our feelings as if they are factual and create that narrative that you were talking about earlier, that a story that we almost create on our own. So not only are we not even thinking about their story, but we're actually creating for us, our own minds, what their story is and why they're doing what they're doing.
We're defining their intention, their motives. And here's the thing, those emotions then make us less reasonable. So we become less empathic, less able to take perspective. So when we kind of minimize our own emotion as it's starting to surface, we maximize our reasoning. We maximize our ability to be empathetic. We maximize our ability to, as Proverbs 26 tells us, not to answer an undiscerning man in relation to his lack of discernment, lest we become like him. So, and listen, we have to remember our sin is not excused because of someone else's behavior. Our sin is not excused because of someone else's behavior. So the true mark of maturity of our Christian faith is when someone hurts us, we really strive to understand and be curious about their situation instead of reacting and trying to hurt them back or simmering internally and creating a slow bleed.
Roxanne, we've got a question that just came in that we're going to take a little break, but I want to just kind of give everyone just an idea of what we're going to be talking about. A question that just came in that says, how do we navigate extreme political differences at the holidays when everyone is coming together, and how do we recover from them if things flare up? So we're going to take a quick break, and on the other end of this break, we're going to answer that question. So stay right with us.
Live with the Louhs with Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne will be back in a moment. Give them a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. They would love to hear from you.
Are you struggling in your walk with Christ? Do you want to rediscover your reason for living, the person you were created to be? Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan gives you the keys to unlock areas of your life that hold you back from fully experiencing the renewal and transformation God has in mind for you. Co-authored by a priest and a psychologist, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, Renewing You combines principles of spiritual growth with psychological tools to help you become your best self, fully connected with God's purpose for you. To purchase this book, please go to store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Live with the Louhs and Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne. Do you have a question for the Louhs? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here once again is Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we go on with the show, I just wanted to invite you all once again, if you're at your computer right now, go to thelouhs.com. That's Louhs, thelouhs.com. Click on that subscribe button and join our daily inspirational messages. You simply just have to put your email address in, and then tomorrow morning when you get up, there's going to be a daily inspirational message from us, and we hope that you'll enjoy. And if you do enjoy these daily inspirational messages, please share them with your friends and family. There's no strings attached. We just simply feel like God has put this on our heart, and we want to just touch as many people as we can with our ministry, and so to God's glory. And we also just, as the commercial share with you, if you're looking for a great Christmas gift, consider Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan. You can find it right here on Ancient Faith. Just go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, all the proceeds from that book are going to Outreach Ministries. So Roxanne, right before the show, right before the break, actually, we were talking about a question that just came in that I think many people probably experienced at Thanksgiving and may experience as well during the Christmas holidays. We're living in very difficult times and very polarizing times, and this is the question that came. It says, how do I navigate extreme political differences, and how do I recover from them, or how do we recover from them if things flare up? Having a political argument or at a dinner table or a conversation that may happen where you're having people with different political differences and sharing them, and then not knowing how to deal with it when the tension in the room starts to grow.
Well, I mean, the biggest probably piece of advice that I could give around sensitive topics like politics is to avoid them. Listen, just because somebody brings up an issue doesn't mean you need to engage. Mm-hmm. And here's where we have to watch ourselves. You have your own opinions. They're forming. They're being born as somebody is telling their stories or giving their opinions. And we feel a righteousness, again, boiling up within us to pounce on everything they're saying and undo it and give our evidence and give our credibility and prove them wrong. But again, what is productive about doing so when mm-hmm. somebody is not asking for your opinion? Here's the thing. A lot of the times, it's interesting when somebody asks a question, they are not necessarily looking for the answer. They're looking for an opportunity to give their answer. Okay. So even if somebody asks a question around politics, be discerning, be neutral, don't engage it. You can simply choose to move on, to sort of avoid the theme. And if it's brought up, don't engage it, make a joke, maybe move on, bring up another subject. And you really are thinking about how I can contribute to a harmonious atmosphere. And if somebody is refusing to avoid the subject, I would say switch gears, okay, and begin listening with goodwill for the relationship over the position. So listen with goodwill for the relationship over the position. I'm not concentrating on their position politically. I'm concentrating on goodwill for this relationship that I have with this individual. So you're going back to the foundation of, I'm here to coexist with you in relation to God and in relation to the person that matters to me at this table, to show and give love and to keep a perspective that really allows Christ's light to shine within me, within this table, and within you. I become responsible for your salvation, for mine, and for the harmony at this table, right? So I'm holding myself accountable to these standards as I'm listening to you. So here's where we make the intentional shift to abandon the idea of winning the argument or convincing someone of their wrongness of their position, and instead just aim to have a conversation in which you kind of become curious, understand more fully why they hold that position. Who is this person underneath their position? Why does it matter? How did they come to it? This is the approaching the conversation with curiosity and this kind of willingness to leave room for nuance and grace. And again, all of this done in a goodwill sense of the word. I'm trying to protect the relationship, not the content of the conversation, not the win. I'm not going for a win here.
Roxanne, I love that answer. There's another question that just came in as well. It says this, and again, I think this is a topic that so many people, especially couples, are dealing with at this time, is how important is it to discuss the expectations of the holidays with your spouse first before agreeing to plans with extended family?
I think it's a must. Would you agree? I mean, your marriage, your spouse is your unit. This is your family unit, your first priority, and we have to decide as a family what we want our holidays to look like. In fact, these are conversations, sort of like how we want to be cared for when we're sick, how we want to have our weeknights look like, what we want vacation to look like. Well, the same question holds true about the holidays. What do we want our holidays to look like? And before everyone's demands and pressures start coming in from the outside, we have to decide from the inside what we want this holiday experience to look like for our family. And then we can bring in and start sequentially making room for these external demands that are being placed upon our family. And we decide with boundaries what we can say yes to and what we have to say no to. And that conversation has to take place before we can ever give any sort of answers to extended family.
Right. And I think too, I think sometimes we end up trying to want to please everyone. and the reality is that in that process, trying to please everyone, you end up, creating some tension within your immediate family. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in just having that conversation. I know it's something that we've done, Roxanne, for years and years, is that, we have a conversation. We know after all these years of marriage, but early on in our marriage is, okay, this is what these expectations are going to be here, that we're going to have this time together as a family to open up our Christmas gifts and to spend time together. And then there's an appropriate time with our parents individually and then collectively, so that there was always that conversation that we knew, so that there was not, sometimes I hear of people that are dreading the holidays because of, these different demands that they placed on the family. And I just would caution everyone, make sure to take care of your first church, which is your family, your immediate family. Because if that becomes the case, then an unhealthy tension takes place, and the true joy of the season is being robbed because you're spending so much time in the Martha kind of work as opposed to the Mary kind of work where you're spending time with family and in Christ.
And I think it's so important that in that conversation take place, because that's how it feels fair. When something is planned without the involvement, we can kind of anticipate what's coming. We know there's protected time for each other's families, so it's less stressful as you're walking into something hoping that it's going to be protected. You can kind of relax into the journey, knowing that it has already been planned and accounted for. And in this situation, this is one where I would tell husbands and wives, you will lose the relationship in trying to win an argument. Do not try to do just what is fair for you, for your side, for your parents, for your siblings. It is what is fair in our marriage, because that's the relationship we're going back into after that day. Right. So accommodating each other and trying to win in the relationship over winning at your position and what you want for yourself.
And if you are like these emailers that send us these questions, we encourage you to do the same. We can also invite you to call us at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You too can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And as always, we're broadcasting this show live this evening on our social media platform on the Louhs Facebook page. So if you are on the Louhs Facebook page, definitely put in a comment in there. We'd love to kind of read them online, as well as if you haven't joined our social media platforms, as I mentioned earlier in the show, they're all under the Louhs. Okay, friends, so I've given you already two, number 1 and number 2, and here's number 3, and that we choose to remember what God has done for me. You know, I think about Christ on that cross. And I shared this on this past Sunday in a sermon that I gave that's actually going to be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow, about giving people the benefit of the doubt. And what I highlighted with them is that, you know, the Bible gives us as best of an account, but it's not necessarily meant to be so historical as it was just transformational when we read the Bible. But the very first statement that's recorded in the Bible, and that may not necessarily be the exact first statement that Jesus makes on the cross, but on the cross, he makes this extraordinary statement. It's the very first statement that he makes that's recorded at least in Scripture. And it says, "Father, forgive them because they do not know what they're doing." You see, he was modeling for us that that they don't even know what they're doing. And I think sometimes we create, as we mentioned in number 2, that we forget that people actually have a story, that sometimes we try to create that story for them, that we try to create why they're doing what they're doing without ever really trying to dig deeper and truly be merciful and walk in their shoes. And what God was showing with us is, look how in the midst of spit on his face, blood running down his face, a crown of thorns, beaten with a cat of 9 tails, and the Bible says that he was beaten beyond recognition, that in that moment, he modeled for us that, Father, just forgive them because they don't know what they're doing.
That empathy and forgiveness at the same time.
Exactly.
He looked at their position and said, wow, they really don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it and what it all means. And how true is that for people in those moments, that they really don't know what they're saying and why they're saying it.
And their impact on us.
And their impact.
Exactly.
But who are we to get, if Christ can say that before he takes his last breath, through injustice and betrayal, is anything really that we get offended by something that matters? I mean, really, like, that holds me accountable every time. Does this matter?
Well, you know, when I was, and Roxanne, in my sermon, as you remember on Sunday, I shared with our congregation that, you know, if we think that we have to earn God's forgiveness, then we'll make sure that other people have to receive and earn our forgiveness. If we think that we have to earn God's forgiveness, then we'll make sure that everyone else has to earn their forgiveness from us. And we'll hold that. And what was so beautiful is that the Bible says that in the book of Romans, that while yet we were still sinning, Christ demonstrated his love by saving us. And so the encouragement for all of us to remember is, and we know this is difficult. We know this is not an easy thing to do. We know that holidays are a beautiful time, but they're also very highly stressful. But we just encourage you to be your very best and to remember who we're living for. What is truly the reason for the season? And to not allow the devil and the enemy to try to steal that joy from us, and to remember that, okay, I need to put on the character of Christ because he was that way with me. You know, I always tell people that, you know, the C.S. Lewis has this extraordinary statement. He says, to be a Christian is to forgive the inexcusable in someone because God first forgave the inexcusable in me. I love that he'd already first done that. And so naturally, we are to do the same. So number 3 is, let's choose to remember what God has done for me.
We have to watch that reactivity as it tries to creep in, as we're remembering what God did for us. We can't become our emotions. If we don't create space between our emotions and our situations and ourselves, then we forget all that God has done for us, right? Because our flesh sort of overwhelms our spirit. So take a step back, label it as it's surfacing, analyze why it's there, figure out what you need to do to make this situation productive, right? Create that distance between you so that you and your emotions, you can remember all that God did for you, because that is the reason for the season, right? Number 4, I would say, choose to do the things that help. It's interesting that over the holidays, I feel as though people get rid of all of their regular routines that keep them whole. They stop taking care of themselves. They don't get ample rest. They overeat, they overdrink, they negate their routines, especially when they're visiting family. And, listen, we have to empower our flesh so that our spirit can soar. So this isn't the time to skimp on sleep or negate our exercise routines. In fact, we should be keeping our routines as much as is possible, even when visiting relatives. Wake up, do the normal things that you would do before you engage. You will be your best self. And at events, really try to refrain from, a lot of people handle negativity by using food or alcohol, and so they tend to almost disconnect from their bodies and fill themselves with overdrinking, overeating. And then their internal narratives become, give birth to judgment and negative emotion.
And become more magnified.
Yeah, we're feeling irritable and agitated, and we're uncomfortably full. And, before we know it, our mindset and our mood has changed, and it spills over into how we treat people, which then makes our situation even worse. So I would say really, really do what works to care for yourself at a time where you need it most. This is when you need your flesh working for your spirit, to empower your spirit, not to immobilize it. And get active at an event. I had someone the other day say, gosh, I'm going to this holiday occasion and I literally have a hard time with almost everybody there. And I said, then get in the kitchen and help do the dishes. Help cook, help the host, be productive, do something that engages, task over people. And so you're contributing in a different sense. And then the conversations might be a bit less confrontational, right? You're kind of talking and passing as you're washing and you're doing, and your eye contact is on the dishes. And so it just makes it a little easier. If you have highly difficult situations, there are still ways that we can be our best self and contribute in meaningful ways.
Well, and I think that even though sometimes something as practical as what you're sharing, it's so important for our listeners to remember, because they're just in those moments sometimes without having a plan. When you're already in that environment, Roxanne, sometimes it just becomes very difficult to think of those things of what to do. So really what we're just trying to give to you are just some practical ways that you can apply to kind of navigate through the Christmas season when we're around people that may just frustrate us. So number 4 is, let's choose to remember to do what helps, to do what really works. And, I want to kind of add a little bit to the next one, and that is number 5 is choose to let go. Choose to let go.
And really, what are we letting go of? How many people walk into their holiday season with this incredible expectation of how perfectly everything is going to go or needs to go? From the food to the family dynamics. We have this almost over-idealistic, Pollyannish view of what we want our holiday to look like. And it is quite unrealistic. Because people aren't perfect, neither are our family gatherings. Nothing is perfect about these situations. And so we have to really, again, stop placing demands on our situations and on people to be something different than they are. And this is almost where we practice the virtue of acceptance and tolerance. And remember, when we practice these virtues, we are clothing ourselves with something. It requires our effort. It's meant to require our effort. It's not a virtue if it comes naturally. So we have to really choose intentionally to walk in and say, I know Aunt so-and-so or Uncle Johnny is gonna be disruptive, or I know he's going to make a negative joke or be sarcastic or comment about my weight or something. So I'm going to choose to accept Uncle Johnny exactly as he is, recognizing with empathy, perhaps he was always criticized growing up. Okay? Maybe he doesn't know how to relate any differently. Maybe he's got social anxiety and makes inappropriate jokes because he doesn't know how to break the ice. There are so many stories that we can't pretend to know, but we have to let go of the expectation that we place on people and the pressure that we place on people to say and do everything as we expect them to. And by the way, in this mode of letting go, we recognize that family systems are different. Family cultures are different. Family routines are different. Family rules are different. So when your family walks into somebody else's system, you cannot put your system on theirs, atop theirs. It is an embracing of it. It's a curiosity about it. And in fact, trying to participate in it as best you can, because you have this sort of goodwill for the relationship that you want to soar. Again, going back to number one, remembering why I'm doing this. Why am I placing an emphasis on harmony here? But how do I make room for this family's norms? Because they're all different, just a little bit different. But we have to stop placing expectations on everything to be a certain way and to go in a certain direction.
Right. And I think that's where things become so magnified, is because we have these expectations. And I would just caution you, that's one of the big things that even in marriage and conflict resolutions within marriages, is that most problems happen in relationships due to the expectations. There's expectations that we place on people that, to be quite honest with you, are that they may not have the capacity to do, but we keep placing them, and therefore when they make those mistakes, which or are unable to meet that expectation that you were setting for them, naturally you're disappointed, and it again creates an unhealthy tension on the inside of you. And when you start magnifying that over within an environment in which there's already stress, it allows you at times to say things or do things, or just to let things bother you in ways that would not naturally. So when Roxanne's talking about this, like choosing to let go, it's let go of those expectations and just really be present. That's one of the things I think that I've learned, in my life. I don't think early on I had this. I would always be thinking about, what else needed to get done, or what was not happening, or how I could organize it a little bit better or differently. I think what I've learned now is that, time is, and maybe because in my role as a priest, I mean, you're always around sometimes events that are, you could be at a baptism 1 hour and then at a funeral the next hour, that you just really remember that I needed to simply be present, that life is so precious. So we encourage you, choose to let go of those expectations. Just be present in that moment.
And that means not getting tangled up in the narrative that we should not have to deal with this person. We shouldn't have to live with this, right? That should creates angst before we even get to the situation, right? And so it isn't about should, it's about I can and I will. It's a few hours, I can manage it, I can handle it. And we have to start talking to ourselves in ways that breed inner harmony, because what lives on the inside will come out on the outside. We can't think that what we brew in our heart stays to ourselves.
Exactly. Roxanne, I was reading this study recently, and it was showing on conflict resolution, and what it was finding out and sharing, they were actually bringing families together that had not been speaking for years and years. And once they brought them together and they were asking them, okay, what's the conflict? What's the problem? Oftentimes they would simply share with them something that happened more recently, an area or an event that took place that really got under their skin. But when the person working on resolving that conflict, in many cases it was a psychologist that was doing so, when they would try to resolve the conflict and ask them, okay, let's dig deeper, when that person would go to the original reason of why they got upset, they were able to go back as far as they could, because the reality is that everyone has a list that they can create. Right. But when they were able to go back, in almost every single study that was done in this particular study, it found that in almost every single time, the other person did not know how that event had impacted that person. All they knew was how that person began treating them. Right. And as such, they began treating that other person as almost in a boomerang type of effect. You treat me this way, I'm going to treat this way. Right.
That's all they paid attention to.
Exactly. So they had created what we talked about earlier, that's narrative that was just not true. So once again, we want to kind of go over the first five, and we're going to give you the final one. But the first one is, let's choose to remember the reason for the season. Let's choose to remember that everyone has a story. Let's choose to remember that what God has done for us. Let's choose to remember what helps. What helps the situation. Number 5 is let's choose to let go. And Roxanne, I'll let you do the number 6.
It's going to be choose to avoid the battles.
Yes.
And before I move into avoiding battles, which is our last and final principle, just want to add one last thing that I forgot with the choosing to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I don't hear people doing often enough, but it helps so much. And that is to stop insisting that people not need what they need, right? If somebody needs affirmation, just give it. If you know Aunt Sue loves to hear how wonderful everything is, instead of placing a judgment about that and getting frustrated by it, just give it, right? If you know Uncle Johnny loves for you to help, then go help. You kind of in accepting who people are, you also have a willingness to join them in giving what helps their spirit soar by helping their flesh. So number 6 is avoiding the battles. And I see some comments in the social media feed here about how to avoid even heated conversations about COVID. Similar to politics, I think we have to know the sensitive themes and we have to walk with care. We have to know ourselves and know other people, what sets people off, and we cater to that. We don't judge it, we cater to that. You don't like being told what to do, so take a deep breath and ask how they will handle it rather than jumping in with some kind of a command, right? If somebody needs affirmations and compliments, we're giving it, right? If somebody has a strong view about COVID, we're walking a very delicate line of not necessarily giving our opinion if it's going to negate theirs. Making room for people and going back to the notion of curiosity, studying someone, asking open-ended questions, not with the point of trying to insinuate a judgment, but just asking questions so that people have an opportunity to explore their values underneath. Do they have some level of anxiety? Is that why COVID is so strong for people, right? I mean, we never know what someone is dealing with. Did they lose a close family member as a result? Are they having trouble breathing through the mask? We really don't know people's stories, but I've found that a simple question that is open-ended allows somebody to tell me who they are. And so when we ask questions with wisdom and without judgment, anything, even what could potentially become a heated conversation, just becomes an opportunity to know someone better. It is not an opportunity to pounce on them or negate their positions, because 99.9% of the time, you are not going to change someone's opinion because they're not asking for your opinion. They're not looking to change.
Well, and I think too, Roxanne, is excuse me. I think that one of the things that we try to do that's really antithetical to what our society is continuously telling us is our society keeps telling us to go into a battle, to make this a big deal. And that's why I think holidays become so stressful, because especially in the world that we're living in. I mean, I as I was mentioning last Sunday, I think our tolerance level in our society is so thin now.
It's at an all-time low.
Yes. I mean, so that the smallest things, I mean, we're living in a cancel culture. We're living in a culture where, are you vaccinated? You're not vaccinated. Are you on the red? Are you on the, are you part of the red states, the blue states? Are you this or that? I mean, we're allowing so much division to take place within us. And now what used to be a level of social grace where you would simply just say, okay, I'm just simply going to ignore that. Now it's like if someone makes a statement, it's like throwing a bomb in a room. I mean, it becomes so combative. And I think for our own health and for our own safety is to remember, again, like we've been talking about, is to put on the character of Christ.
To clothe ourselves.
Because in the midst of his worst day, where he was everything that you could have imagined someone getting under his skin, literally getting under his skin, not to mention just figuratively, but literally getting under his skin, that he mustered up the energy to say a prayer that, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. And I think that's so important for us to do, is just to remember that these people are going to frustrate us. We're not trying to tell you that that's not going to happen, but we are telling you that that's a choice that you're going to make and not a feeling that you got to follow.
Right. So if we're avoiding these battles, number one thing to remember is, what is my value here? Is my value to win this argument, to put out my opinion and show defensively why someone is wrong? Is that my value? Or is my value to bring harmony to the atmosphere? We have to know our impact on the emotional climate, and everything we do or don't do, say or don't say, has an impact on the emotional climate for everyone around us. So we have to be careful. What am I valuing in this moment? Am I valuing so much winning this debate that I completely destroy the emotional climate and the harmony that God is desiring to take place at the event of his birth? So it is all about the value we walk into those situations with. When we're choosing to avoid a battle, we're also choosing to remember our value.
Beautifully said, Roxanne, as always. We want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I can't believe the show is we've already past our time. And so, but we wanted to thank you so much for joining us. Again, go to our website at thelohs.com. You'll find out when our next speaking engagements are around the country. And you'll also be able to register for our daily inspirational messages at thelohs.com. Click on the subscribe button and put your email address in. And we also want to once again remind you about our retreat that we're hosting, that Ancient Faith is hosting at the Antiochian Village in February. It's a making over your marriage. If your marriage just needs a little bit of a pickup and needs some area to grow, we encourage you. This is a retreat that you do not want to miss. We've been working on this for actually a couple of months now for that weekend retreat. If you are interested, go to store.ancientfaith.com/events. Once again, I want to thank Matushka Trudy for always producing our show. Next Tuesday's show, we're talking about the impact that technology is having on our children. Our children spend about 8 hours a day in watching entertainment and media. How is it truly impacting them, and how is it shaping their lives? It's a show you don't want to miss. Next Tuesday, right here on Ancient Faith Radio with Live with the Louhs. God bless you all, and stay strong in your walk of faith.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of the book Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan, which can be purchased at store.ancient